Hi everyone, it's Nate's Dad the Gamer. Welcome to my second Chivalry 2 Hints and Tips video. Chivalry 2 was one of my favorite games and has been since it came out. I like it so much that I was, some might say, cocky enough to make a Hints and Tips video more than a year ago. Those tips are still really applicable in general and cover some of the more basics of the game, so go ahead and check that old video out. But I think now is a great time for a new video as we welcome a ton of new players to Chivalry with the release on Game Pass. For this video, I've reviewed 6 months or so worth of my saved clips and tried to classify them into the following general tip categories from the least impactful to the most, in my opinion. 1. Improvisation, which is generally using things in unexpected ways to win the fight. 2. Miscellaneous Tactics, which I would describe as the little things you do within the mechanics to win fights, but I didn't have enough clips of each one to make their own category. 3. Ranged combat adding versatility, which kind of explains itself, but I'll talk more over some clips. And 4, the most important, evasiveness and movement. This is probably the most important skill to develop in both individual fights and, more importantly, when you're outnumbered. It's possible that in the end your deadliest weapons are the dodge button and the left analog stick. Those are sort of the general rough categories, and as we go through the clips, I'll discuss them and I'll mention more useful tidbits and tips that crop up as well. Let's get started. First off, we have improvisation. One of the fun things about this game is the way it allows for creativity on the battlefield. Like a couple seconds ago when you saw me try to drop a bunch of barrels on people and miss horribly. Keep an eye out for interesting ways to dispatch your foes and use the environment to your advantage. You can see here I've put a pole or whatever between me and some hypothetical enemy on my left. I think I was hoping the guy in front of me would stab that instead of me, but it acts as a bit of protection for me in the heat of combat. If there had been someone there doing a slice, they may have hit the pole instead of me. This last one is straight out of a tooltip from their loading screens. If the enemy is fleeing like a coward, throw your weapon. These next couple clips just fall into the category of you never know what might kill someone, and I got a laugh creating them. I guess the general lesson here is if you're not holding your weapon, throw whatever you got.
Throw me a bone!
Oh, and remember when I said to use the environment? Well, I apologize to my teammates here, but I don't always miss. These last couple clips are improvisational in nature, but they're very specific to archers. So if you're running into an archer and you're out of range, and all you have is a sword like me, there is a way to block their arrows. Normally you have to have a shield, but if you want to be a Jedi, in this game, you can if you time your counter just right.
That hurt!
So we've reached the Miscellaneous Tactics section of my video. Again, these are just kind of clips where I'm doing little sort of things to give myself an edge in a fight or win a fight, and I'm going to play the clips and point them out to you. None of these are sort of impactful enough for me to make their own section out of, but they're worth pointing out. So let's get started. Okay, this first one's really short and sweet. You can see that as I went to hit him, I moved to my right and hit him when he was off my screen. And that will make sure my sword hits as soon as possible. If he was going to swing against me, I might be able to beat him to contact and interrupt his swing. That's covered in the game's tutorial, so make sure you give that a look.
Keep it up! We've liberated half of the prisoners!
This one again is kind of covered in the tutorial and fairly straightforward. I countered his slash and then feinted my counter into an overhead. So this is a kind of a more sophisticated counter because it includes a feint, and I find that people tend to have trouble countering the overheads compared to the slashes. People tend to kind of reflexively hit that slash counter and that leaves them open. It's hard to tell if he was trying to do that here from the animation, but this sort of a counter into a feint is going to be very useful for you, so use that a lot. Now this next bit's pretty cool because it kind of goes against what I did in the last clip, hitting the guy off screen to my left. Instead, I use a heavy attack, and watch very carefully, I drag it a little bit against my own swing so I hit him slower. This is to throw off his counter timing in case he uses a slash counter. And I do think he does try to counter it at the very end of my swing. You can see him kind of make the counter animation, but my swing hits him because it comes a little bit after that. This next one is a technique called target switching, and you'll see I get a counter and then immediately switch targets for that swing to the person to my right. This is a very effective technique when you're fighting more than one person. Here's another clip of kind of an extended dust up here. I just want to point out two things. You're going to see me use target switching again in the fight to good effect, and also using a feint to fix a bad swing. So I went to take an overhead, he moved, so I switched it to a slash so that I would still be able to get him with that swing. Take a look. Again, this next one's kind of a little longer, but I'm putting it in there for two reasons. One, it's fun, right? You'll see me kind of using some of the techniques I've already talked about. And there's, I think, 3 straight swings with a dismemberment in this clip, so I had to share it. But more importantly, at the end, I want you to notice that I'm going to use range to my advantage, right? Someone comes in with a shovel to try to stab me, but I know he's out of range and he's not going to get me with that stab, so I don't even try to counter the stab. I just start my own counter so that my swing is on my left and I hit him immediately while he's recovering the weapon. So use range to your advantage in those fights too. You don't always have to block. So this section's probably the least interesting of all the sections, the ranged combat. It's basically going to be clips of me shooting things as an archer or throwing weapons to good effect. I placed it a little higher on my list than the Miscellaneous Tactics, but it probably could have gone the other way around. I bumped it a little higher, I guess, because it feels more impactful when you pull up these shots. I've gotten kills at very long distances, and gotten kills by throwing just my sword into someone mid-sword fight, then pulling the sword right out of them and killing them with it. Even though you're using those other tactics more often, their effect is a bit more subtle than that. So if you're primarily a fighter in this game, as most people are, just get comfortable with ranged fighting. Throw your throwable weapons to get familiar with leading targets and weapon drop over distance. Play as the archer to learn about the timing on the bow. How far can you shoot effectively? How do you react when someone's coming at you with a sword? In the end, you'll be able to get more kills from a safe distance where you wouldn't have gotten them before, and you'll start to understand the timing of archers to get some of those Jedi-style arrow deflections on the way in for the kill. So this last category is evasiveness and movement, and I consider it to be critical. Every single one of these clips that you're going to see is me versus multiple opponents, because that's where having the evasiveness really shines when it works, but all this movement and control of the fight will work in one-on-one fights too. It's also worth pointing out that I only survive in half of these clips, although I do exact a price on my opponents, because even if you're good at controlling the fight, being outnumbered really isn't advisable. Don't play and seek out lopsided fights. They're going to happen to you, so just put these skills to use when it happens. In addition to the movement and thought process that I have in trying to manage these fights, I'm going to point out some of the miscellaneous tactics again as they come up, because all of these clips really kind of showcase that as well. So this is going to act as sort of a summary and a reiteration of the other points that I've made in the video. So let's get started. Okay, so let's start to break down the first clip, and this is going to take a while because I want to take time and analyze my thought process at each step of it. So in this first clip, you're going to see me involved in a fight, and I realize I'm about to get rushed. So I'll do a quick target switch to kind of blunt the first attacker that gets there, but I know the pressure's coming from my left, and I've got to get out of there, and I need an escape route. So what you'll see me do very quickly is glance to my right, and I notice that one of my enemies has run past and isn't engaging, so I have a way out over there. Yep, so there was a lot going on there, right? You saw an example of target switching really quick in there, and as I backed off, I created distance when one of their guys missed with a sledgehammer, which allowed me to hit him while he was recovering his weapon. But as far as movement and evasiveness goes, I did not seize my chance to go right away. I stayed in the fight a little longer, and then by the time I'm able to move right and try to escape, I'm cut off. So now I've got to pay a price to make it through that opening and create more space to extend the fight. So at this point the battle's turned into a bit of a scramble, and I know I'm not going to last much longer, so my goal is changing to do as much damage as possible before they take me down. To do that, I'm just going to be looking for creating space between me and the enemy, especially where they're trying to flank me. I'm going to look for some escape routes, and I'm also going to try to get them to line up and get in each other's way as much as possible, because if they can't hit me, then I'm safe to last a little longer there. So let's let the clip finish up and you can see how it ends. So this clip, we already start kind of in the thick of things, and again, you can see me looking for my escape route. So I know on the right I have one guy in a cart, so that's where I'm headed to try to get out of this fight. I've already done some damage, and you can see right here I've actually already lined up my guys in a line, so they're going to have to go around each other if they all want to gang up on me. So at this point, I've used target switching a couple times, as you saw, and kind of generating space to survive the one versus many and turn it into a 1v1. So we're going to start to see some individual tactics and 1v1 fighting come into play before it degenerates into another one versus many, and I think things don't go too well for me in this one either. So however briefly you saw a little 1v1 fighting there, you can see kind of I evaded his overhead without blocking it because I wanted to be able to start my swing early. I did an overhead and he evaded it as well. So he did the same thing to me that I just did to him. He's very good. And then I turn and I'm surprised by a special attack from another opponent. So it's a 2v1 again. But you can see here I've lost my weapon, but I stepped out of range of his next attack to create an opening to strike him. But I'm outnumbered and outgunned at this point because I've lost my primary weapon. It's worth noting here that my primary is a bladed weapon, so it's a little better in one versus many scenarios because the blunt weapons like the mace I'm about to use don't pass through the enemy if you strike them to hit anybody else. So you have to use heavy attacks in multiple opponent scenarios, which doesn't work out as well. Let's see how this one ends. So I like this next one for a couple reasons. One is because I actually survive it, so you guys can see that sometimes I make it out of these combats alive. And two, it really focuses in on one key aspect of fighting in many versus one scenarios, and that I'm trying to get these two guys that I'm fighting in a line pretty much the whole time during the fight. So let's watch this play out, and you can see how it ends when you do line them up nicely and get a good swing in. So this is my last clip, and I'm just going to kind of let it play through from beginning to end. But I wanted to end with this one because I survived, and two, because it kind of demonstrates like a summation of this entire video, beginning to end. So you're going to see me with an unfamiliar weapon. Normally I don't have this sword, and I guarantee you it's because I threw my sword at somebody earlier on in the fight. Then I get into an individual fight and use some of those individual combat tactics that I talked about, a feint into a kick with a kill, and then you'll see me get engaged by multiple opponents and start to work my way right where I know I have help in an escape route, because my teammates are there. And you'll kind of see me try to line up the enemy, although it doesn't work this time, but I have a teammate on my left covering my flank briefly, so I'm able to create an opening, fight my way out, and escape. Okay everyone, that ends my second Chivalry 2 hints and tips video. I hope you all enjoyed my overanalyzing of my Chivalry play, and I hope you guys get something out of it that helps you improve your play too. If you like this content and want to see more, give me a like and a subscribe, and let me know in the comments.
I cannot.